Welcome to the next part of the Resident Evil Cancelled Creatures segment. Last time we took a look at some bizarre creature designs that could have made the series even scarier than before, but there are still more hideous and frightening creatures to observe. So without any delays, let's begin. The Kidnapper. The Kidnapper was a rejected creature design that was meant to make an appearance in Resident Evil The Darkside Chronicles, and by the looks of the concept art, we can see that the Kidnapper was a bird of prey with powerful talons that are capable of picking up a person. Now there isn't much information regarding this creature, but seeing that its design doesn't really look unique except for the large talons, must be why the Kidnapper was cancelled. But for the gameplay of the Darkside Chronicles, it would have been a right fit for a boss fight in the game, seeing as the game is a rail shooter, and a giant bird that flies around and picks up a character seems like an enjoyable boss fight. There's no telling whether this Kidnapper would pick up its victims and drop them from a high distance, or slash its prey with its enormous talons. One thing for sure is that this would have become the first giant infected bird that we'd ever face off against in a Resident Evil game. Kamadoma. The Kamadoma was a giant infected cricket that was seen as a cancelled creature in the Resident Evil archives. Its name is the Japanese term for Rhaphidophoridae, a family of crickets also known as spider crickets, but a giant cricket doesn't exactly appear as threatening as a giant spider, so maybe this is why the Kamadoma only went as far as a sketch. So far it isn't revealed to which game the Kamadoma was supposed to appear in. However, the Resident Evil Archives guide describes all the key events that occurred in Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and Code Veronica. So it's anyone's guess as to which of these games the Kamadoma was possibly going to appear in. Now aside from that, its design looks slightly similar to the Reaper from Resident Evil 5. It is very likely that the Kamadoma was what inspired the design for the Reaper, but what do you think? The Sea Snake. The Sea Snake was a rejected creature design that was also seen in the Resident Evil archives, and just like the Kamadoma, it hasn't been revealed as to which game the Sea Snake was meant to appear in. And if you take a look at its design, it looks very similar to the Gravedigger from Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. The sketch to the left side shows Jill in her Resident Evil 1 uniform, except for the shorts. So it's not a sure thing whether this Sea Snake was meant to be in Resident Evil 1, possibly replacing the infected sharks. But if this cancelled creature looks a lot like the Gravedigger from Resident Evil 3, then that could easily explain why the creators decided against using this Sea Snake. However, its resemblance may be the only thing it shares with the Gravedigger, because it looks as if this creature was meant to appear in an underwater location. And if so, then which game between Resident Evil 0 through Code Veronica was meant to include an underwater location? Dolly. The Dolly was a creature that was originally going to be in Resident Evil 0, but ended up being replaced by the Plague Crawler instead. The Plague Crawler was an arthropod species that was genetically engineered as part of Dr. James Marcus's early experimentations into the T-virus based bioorganic weapons. The initials Dolly stand for DNA Arranged Lack of Intelligence. Comparing both the Dolly and Plague Crawlers, I'd say that the Dolly has scarier features, as it almost looks like a failed experiment that happened to evolve, and the Plague Crawlers look more like giant insects. It's only 7.9 inches tall, so its model would have been completely different from the Plague Crawlers, as those were almost 2 meters in length. Originally, the Dolly started off as an enemy that would hang off the ceiling in a cocoon, and it would eventually evolve and fall to the ground. But the reason why this creature was mainly scrapped was because the creators thought that it would be difficult for players to look up or to show the ceiling, and that its nature was hard to grasp, and it fell out of place among the other creatures. Now, if you had to choose between both creatures and cancel one of them, you never would have guessed that the Dolly was cancelled, as it appears to be much more terrifying, and one can only imagine what its tail is used for. The Mollusk Enemy. The Mollusk Enemy was a creature that was rejected for Resident Evil 6. There isn't much information about this creature except that it was intended to be a human-based creature, but would walk in an awkward fashion, similar to a person walking on their hands. That sounds like a very creative way to make a creature's movements look scarier than its appearance, and it would have been interesting to see exactly what it would look like. Unfortunately, we only have one sketch showing us what the mollusk would sort of look like, as well as how it would attack. But what exactly was this cancelled creature's finished concept art look like? And what would its origins be? Flying creature. The flying creature was also a rejected creature that was meant to appear in Resident Evil 6. There's little to no information regarding this flying creature, and just like the mollusk enemy, it would only go as far as one sketch design. It almost looks like it would resemble a giant dragonfly, and it would fly in groups, so taking them down would either be a bit challenging or a lot of fun if you're using a submachine gun. Maybe the flying creature was meant to appear in a helicopter scene, but we'll never know until the creators confirmed it. The Spider-Man. The Spider-Man is not your typical friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. At first, I thought this creature design was a different design from the man-spider that we looked at in the previous cancelled creatures video, but it appears that this was its own creature design that was meant to make an appearance in Resident Evil 0. Its design is by all means a creepy concept, and it appears that a spider is clinging into a human and controlling it. The creators were going to try and make this Spider-Man move like both a spider and a person, but just like the Dolly, the creators thought that this creature was too much of a departure from the other Resident Evil monsters at the time, so they decided to cut this creature from the game. One can only imagine how this creepy Spider-Man would move and attack its prey. Would it use web to try and tie its victims with it? Would it bite and poison you like the giant spiders? Or would it try and take control of your character next if it ended up killing you? Let's hope to someday find out. Golgotha. Golgotha was a creature that was originally considered to be the final boss for Resident Evil 2, but it was rejected in 1996, and it was also going to be able to mutate into a second form referred to as Super Golgotha. And for unknown reasons, Golgotha would feature Albert Wesker's face at the end of its tail. But in the early stages of Resident Evil 2, known as Resident Evil 1.5, a creature with a similar body to Golgotha appeared in the footage of 1.5. However, it could also be the early versions of William Birkin in his G-Virus infected form. And as a side note, the creature's name originates from Golgotha, a hill outside Jerusalem which the biblical Gospels write as the site of Jesus' crucifixion. Now, seeing as the Resident Evil 2 remake is on its way, there might just be a chance to see this cancelled creature make an appearance and see for ourselves if this creature was good enough to bring back from the dead. But with that said, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, be sure to leave a like, share with others, and subscribe if you haven't. And if you'd like to see some extra content, or you'd like to see your name at the end of the videos, then feel free to support the channel by donating a single $1 to my Patreon. There are also additional perks for donating more than $1. The link is on the description, along with the link to my Facebook page, Tumblr, DeviantArt, and Twitter. But anyways, I'll see you all in the next video, and remember to have an awesome day.